Hello, hello. Welcome on this beautiful Friday. TGIF. Thank goodness it's Friday. I'm so excited. Yay. I'm so excited to be talking to Christopher Renstrom, who's just joined. So let me see. Can I? There. I invited Christopher to join my live. Hi from Arizona. Yes, hello, hello. Hi,
Did we
Christopher.
do this
We
successfully?
did.
Yay! Isn't that always such an amazing achievement when you
It
get like
is like there's always this nervousness, like, is it going to work? Or is there going to be some kind of technology
thing?
snafu?
I know. Is Celeste going to be lost in space? Oh no, 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 don't let it happen. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. I am so excited to talk with you and introduce you to my audience and about your
Oh,
wonderful book,
well,
Rise and Shine. Although everybody probably knows who you are anyway. I got so many comments about how much people love you, but I
oh,
just want to say how much I love you because
well,
it
it's
was such
mutual
a
adoration, It's like I adore you. I worship the ground you walk on. Oh my
Oh,
God.
you're so sweet. Like, I've been following you for years, and like you did you were the astrologer for Astrology
Yeah.
Hub one year with the Libra Libra moon lunation, and the way you described it with the three little pigs. Do you remember that?
Oh
And
my God.
when you
Oh
took
my
us
God. That's going back. That's good. Right. The three.
you took us on this journey through like astrology, through different symbology and stories and history. It just blew my mind, and I have been a
Oh,
devotee ever since. It was so delighted to meet you in person
well,
at
same
Ishtar
here.
last year.
Same
Yes.
here. Same. No, astrology is so much about art and fables and folk tales and all of those sorts of things. And there's a whole history of astrology that's been transmitted through that kind of media over centuries in which people aren't really all that aware of. And so it was so much fun. The Three Little Pigs, that was a fun one. Yeah, I remember the one, the House of Straw, the House of, and I think we were demonstrating some Taurus or something with the House of Brick. A
Yes.
trine. That's what we were talking about, a trine. Right. Okay.
Yes. Well, let me introduce you as the author of the Cosmic Calendar and Ruling Planets, as well as Rising Sign, and that you still write horoscopes for the Chronicle, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm on sfgate.com.
Oh,
Right.
what
Exactly.
wonderful! And the weekly horoscope, which is amazing for Astrology Hub. And you lecture
Oh,
on the history of astrology. Were you an art history major? Is that right?
I was an art history. I wish I was major. Okay. It's like I
Uh-huh.
wish I had taken a course. I never did. It's completely, what I've taken over the years. And I'm impossible in a museum. It's like, it's like, ugh, it's forever. I take forever to museum. I'm always like, taking in and stuff like that. I love art. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
So is it like all of this information as you just come through your astrology studies, or
Yeah.
just your interest in life and things?
Yeah.
What is your sun, moon, and
My,
rising?
my sun, moon, and rising, my sun sign is Capricorn. Okay, so I'm currently leading a campaign of like, Capricorns are fun. Okay, so my sun sign is Capricorn. Yes, we're fun. Okay, so I'm getting over a cold, but sun sign is Capricorn, moon is Pisces. So that's what keeps me decent. Okay. And then the rising sign is either 29 Aries or 0 Taurus. And we're still kind
Oh,
of flipping a coin over that one, trying to figure out
oh, what?
which of the two might go with that.
Well, there's going to be an eclipse at 29 Aries
I
on
know.
April
Looking forward
20th.
to it.
So yeah, that's really interesting. You're
We'll all
that point.
find out on that day, April 20th. Looks like it was a 29 Aries, Christopher.
Yeah, to
as
see
there's
what
like this,
happens.
as there's this black hole and smoke coming up where once I stood.
Uh-huh. No, you you are going to be here for a long time. And so I just wanted to point out, like, you have such a unique voice and the way you communicate things and communicate astrology. And I love in this book how you, and I want you to explain how you talk about, more than anyone I've heard, about how astrology is a calendar.
Yes.
And how you can look at your rising sign as the clock.
Right.
And do you mind just going through that?
Oh, no.
And you do a little demonstration in here about, like, where your sun is based on your rising sign.
Sure.
Yeah.
You come rescue me, Celeste, if I end up in the weeds, okay? Like, we have a deal here. It's like, Christopher, bring it back. Okay. The reason they're called the big three, right? We all know the big three are the sun, the moon, and the rising. The reason that they're all called the big three is because they're situating us in time. Okay, your sun sign is always going to tell you the time of year that you were born. Okay, the moon is going to tell you what time of month you were born. Okay, in that birthday month, and then the rising sign will tell you the time of day. So that's why these three sort of stand out as the most important ones, because they situate you in time. And the reason I talk about astrology being a calendar is because if you go back and really look at the history of astrology, and it's always disputable. Was it a religion? No. Was it a science? You know, the sort of thing. Astrology was always a calendar. If you go back to the real roots of astrology, it's a calendar. And it was created in order to tell time. And out of that comes our whole relationship to time. You know, it's Saint Augustine who brings up fate and predestiny and all that didn't exist in astrology texts. Time was more like there was the consistency and the security, knowing that the sun would move through 4 seasons, that you could go through winter, but it would be followed by spring. That summer was, you know, a peak way of living, but there was going to be autumn. So there was always this sense that there was a consistency to life. And once we were able to catalog that or create temples and sculptures and hieroglyphs and ephemerides recording this idea that the planets came back to where they were in the sky, that we had 4 seasons, astrology took on this kind of like wonderful security blanket. You know, it wasn't like we were at the whim of nature or the whim of the cosmos that you know, as Ecclesiastes says, for every season turn, or the 60s song, you know, that things follow. And so this gave a sense of consistency and security. Plus, whoever was in charge of the civilization, you know, whether it was a king or a pharaoh or high priestess, if you were in charge of the calendar, you were in charge of the civilization. So the calendar was always linked to the person who was in charge. And astrology was our way of clocking the calendar. So that's why I always say astrology is a calendar, but it also talks about, you know, we think about living in time, but this wonderful quote from Niebuhr, which is, time lives within us. Okay, and so we go through time as an interior, or we experience time as an interior experience. So for me, that was the thing that really sort of like took astrology out of like, it's a science, it's a religion, you know, out of the sort of like chocolate, peanut butter, chocolate, peanut butter. Took it out of that debate and it put it where it really began, which is why where it belongs, which is why we see it in every single major civilization on the planet, whether it's Egypt, Mesoamerica, Asian. Astrology has been there not because of superstition, because it had a job, which was to tell time.
I love that. I love how you tell that. And that explains why the ancients freaked out so much when there were eclipses, solar eclipses. When the sun's light went out in the middle of the day.
Or the moon's light went out in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Everyone was dependent on that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The red glow. Yeah.
What's fascinating about that, though, Celeste, is that they also used eclipses to tell if your calendar was on or off. If the eclipse did, because an eclipse takes place, if the eclipse did not take place when you said it did,
yes,
it was like, okay, your calendar sucks. Okay,
you're fired from your job.
Right, your calculations for the calendar are off.
Yes.
And so eclipses were actually rectifiers every year for telling if your calendar was timing things correctly or not. That was the other thing that made eclipses so important.
Oh, amazing. amazing. Yeah, that's so, see, learning new things all the time with Christopher. You will always learn something new, a different way of thinking about things. And yeah,
Right.
it'd be
Well, there's only
enlightening.
2,500 years of astrology, so there's like a lot to wade through.
Exactly, exactly. And I love how you talk about how the rising sign is the face of the clock.
Right.
I've never heard it put that way. So would you go into a
Sure.
little bit about how you see that?
Well, over the years, when I was learning astrology, you hit the books and you listen to the teacher and things like this. And I was so blessed with really wonderful teachers and really wonderful mentors. And honestly, I was blessed to be learning astrology at the time that I was learning it, which was 1980s New York City. Okay, but it was also New York City. So and it was just a really great time to be practicing, learning and then practicing astrology. But I had been brought up, I think, with many people that the rising sign was a persona, or a persona or a mask that you put on, and I was kind of like, okay, maybe, okay, sort of sounds it, but like, I would never watch a client or a regular person be like, excuse me, I have to put on my persona now and like enter as this other person. I mean, no one puts on a persona, or like, this is my mask. I mean, unless it's a mud mask late at night and you're doing it for your, complexion and things like that. But the thing is, and so what began to strike me was that actually the rising sign was a very animated, very spontaneous, very reactive part of the chart. And it was also very visible. So I was trying to figure out, well, what does it mean? What does it mean? And then as I was writing this book, doing research and then writing this book, it struck me, it's the face of the chart. It's actually the face of the chart, and it's the thing that is reacting and responding, just like a face expresses, reacts, and responds. And my agent said, because when I proposed it, she's like, okay, well, what's the difference between a sun sign, which is you're going to be talking about in Cosmic Calendar, and a rising sign. Tell us that difference, Christopher, and you can sell your book. So it was just like, wow, got into your dance. Okay. And I thought about it, and I said to her, do you ever have a sense that who you are inside is someone that you know to be true? It's who you are. She's like, sure. But how that person isn't necessarily what is on the face. And then I said, have you ever seen Dark Passage? And is it Dark Passage? It is Dark Passage, isn't it, Celeste? Have you ever seen it? Humphrey Bogart. It's a Humphrey Bogart, Betty Bacall, Humphrey Bogart
I haven't
film.
seen that one.
It's amazing. And to me, it was kind of very much the rising thing. Okay, so the film begins with the camera. It's a camera's point of view, and so it's the character, okay, and he's on the lam. He's running from the police, and people are helping him in the streets of San Francisco and things like that. I don't know why they're helping him. Somehow they help this person who's a fugitive from justice or the law see a plastic surgeon because he's a very famous socialite, and the plastic surgeon's going to change his face, and so when the plastic surgeon decides to change the face, the cameras go, the bandages go over the camera like this, right? Okay. And then the bandages come off, and it's Lauren Bacall, who's like, looking down. She's like, "How you doing?" Stranger.
Wait, Humphrey Bogart becomes Lauren Bacall?
No. Lauren Bacall is the POV of the camera.
Oh,
okay. Okay, so you see Lauren Bacall looking, and then the camera switches for the first time to Humphrey Bogart's face.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, I feel a little rough or whatever. And she's like, but you look great or something like that. And so he gets up. And what happens is that in the film, it goes from having no face to when it gets his face done, having a face. And that's when you're really introduced to Humphrey Bogart in the film. And I was like, that's a rising sign. Okay, from the sun sign, we're the camera POV going through the first 10 minutes or whatever the movie. But then the rising sign, once that clicks into place, you've got a face, you've got a place in life, you've got a voice, all these sorts of things. So the sun sign is really, this is who I know I am down deep inside, but the rising sign is the face, and the face does not always act in conjunction with the self.
Yes, okay. And I love how you talk about that, depending on the modalities and whatnot. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dark Passage is a really great movie, and it's like actually, and Agnes Moorehead is in it, and it's like really, really great. You have to
Okay.
see that movie.
Okay,
It's
I've
very,
got to
really
see this movie. This is our homework to watch Dark Passages and think
fun
about
homework.
how it's the rising sign, the face with which you meet the world,
Yeah.
that has a lot to do with how you're treated by the world, right?
And how you learn about the world. You
Yeah.
know, the rising sign, to me, the right, I mean, what was also a big thing that really opened it up for me was how Mercury is in its joy in the first house, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and I don't know if everyone's familiar with joys, they're like really, really great and they really unlock a chart. But
Yeah, why
but the
don't we
idea,
go through the planetary joys? And these are more a traditional technique where planets have, when they're in a certain house,
yeah,
they're the happiest.
they're the happiest
So,
regardless of the zodiac sign that they are in,
mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
which is a different thing from planetary dignity according to the
Mm-hmm.
signs. So
Yeah.
Mercury's in its joy in the first house. So the first house is a very, to me, mercurial and
Mm-hmm.
even Venusian quality. This is without a planet being there. I'm just saying, from my feeling of it, that it's very mercurial, it's very Venusian. The first house is engaging with people. It's how
Yes.
we're engaging, you know, and then when you think of like the early games we learn as a child, Celeste, you know, making faces, peekaboo, hiding, and then here I am, you
Yeah.
know, we how much we pay attention to the face and imitating the face and relating to that face. And to me, the rising sign is continually learning how to be, you know,
Yes.
through imitating or mimicry or watching or interaction. And so there's this quality just to the rising sign, whatever the 12 signs it is, but it's one that's very interactive, regardless of where the sun is. You may have a very non-interactive sun placement in the
Mm-hmm.
chart, but the rising sign is carrying on that conversation or that visit for you.
Yes. I feel like when I learned my rising sign, and when, clients come to us and learn their rising sign,
What's your
it
rising
opens.
sign?
I'm a Cancer rising, so I'm
Oh,
a Taurus sun,
oh,
an
lovely.
Aries moon, and a
Okay.
Cancer rising.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. That's wonderful because there's that Cancer Taurus thing that's going on, you know, which is
Yes.
so
Yes.
lovely. That's
Yeah.
why everyone adores you.
Aw.
It's
Thank you.
so,
Yeah. And so, yeah, people have always, and you talk about it in this book, in the book, about how with a Cancer rising, people just like feel like they can confide in you and share secrets, or
oh,
like
yeah.
tell you their whole life story, or assume you're trustworthy.
Because you're giving off this familial vibe,
Mm-hmm.
okay? They
Mm-hmm.
feel like, you know, oh, you're a member of my family, like I can, you know, and you get that with the water sign risings anyway, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
the water signs always sort of move the unconscious
Mm-hmm.
of other, they kind of give this psychic face
Yeah.
massage to the other, you know, and people just sort of feel like they can unload or unburden or divulge or
Mm-hmm.
whatever with the water sign. But Cancer rising really gives off that feeling of like, I feel like I could trust you with this, or I feel like I could trust you with my money, or I feel like I could, you know, hang out with you or bond with you or be with you, which is wonderful, as you pointed out, if you have a sun sign that understands the Cancer rising.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Taurus and Cancer are very simpatico.
Yeah.
So your Taurus sun's going to be like, okay, let's, you know, sit down and visit, you know, type of thing. But if you're a Cancer rising with Aquarius sun, the
Yeah.
The Aquarius sun is WTF. Like, why are
Because the signs are inconjunct. They're king-cubs. They have nothing in common by
right? So the
either
Cancer,
elements, fire, air, earth, or
so
water,
the
or mode.
Aquarius sun is like, who are you talking to and about, and why are you telling me these things? And can we get back to the mathematical equation we were working on, or
Yeah.
something like that? You know,
Yeah.
so that's where the rising signs can get very intriguing. Because again, the sun and the rising don't always mix and match. And I wanted to make it deliberately about the sun and rising in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Because once we get into the other planets, that's, I mean, which is great, you know, that's how you read something, a chart, like for instance, but once you get into that, that's when it goes off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it gets really complicated and all. And so I thought like there's a natural relationship between the sun sign and the rising, because we determine the rising sign by where the sun is, in the
Yep.
chart that day. Okay, so I felt like those two planets really go together, and that's why Rise and Shine really is about that relationship between the sun sign and the rising sign.
Yes, and I love, so you have in the book, you have a chapter on each rising sign, and then that rising sign with all of the sun signs. So you go through all the sun.
144
Yes, you
combinations.
go through all those combinations, and you talk about as well. So, if you're born with the same sun and rising, you're born when the sun rises. You're born at around whatever, 6 a.m., depending on the time of year.
Or place in the globe
A
or
place,
things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then that makes a statement because, sometimes it's like, oh, you're double Scorpio. And someone's like, double Scorpio, what does that mean? You're really Scorpio. You're really intense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, where do we go from there? And there's so much information in just that. Because think about it for a moment. If you're the sun is rising and you're the rising sign. You're let's call it a double Scorpio, right? You're at the front of the line. Okay. If you're your own sign rising. Okay, so you're in front of the curtain. You're not one of the chorus people in the back of the scene, sort of like mulling around to discuss. You're in the front, okay, and the spotlight's there on you. And so there's no distance at all. So your feeling is going to be continually like you're on, like you have to be on, that, people are dealing with you, and there's no distance. There's no ability to sort of assess your own behavior, how you interact with other people. There's no kind of objectivity. There might not even be that much room for reflection. It doesn't mean you don't have those things. You can develop those things. But if you have this feeling that you're constantly in a fishbowl, that everyone's constantly looking and talking to, you don't really get any distance or observation on yourself. And that can be one of the difficulties to being your own sun sign rising. I mean, it's great in terms of dynamo and getting things done, but it's not so great that if someone's kind of like, well, did you ever think about, doing it a different way? You're kind of like, I have no idea what you're talking about, because there's no distancing on it. Does that make any sort of sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And people, like, where your sun shines, that's what you're here to work on this life. So if your sun is in your first house, then you're here to work on, like, yourself and learning how to moderate or adjust potentially your personality based on the feedback you're getting from the world. And it's like a journey for you with lots of planets in the first house. Yeah. That's definitely, especially the sun. Yeah.
Whereas if the sun were in, let's say, a midheaven placement, okay, then you're kind of looking down at everything, because the sun is so elevated in the chart, and you can sort of see how people might react to you that way, but that's not really you. You're kind of, because you're up here at the top of the chart. And then let's say you're in the nadir at the bottom of the chart, you may have this continual feeling of, there's this person that people see, but I'm not sure if that's that person, and you're kind of catching up to, because the sun is underneath it and hasn't risen yet. So it's kind of like trying to catch up to this idea that other people have of you. So just even in the placement of the sun in the chart, and the distance from the rising sign, it can talk about proximity is basically what I'm talking about. It can talk about a closeness to the rising sign, an understanding of the rising sign, or situations where it's very hard to understand the rising sign. And for me, that's when the sun is in the 6th, 7th, or 8th houses, because it's as far away from the rising sign as it can be. And it can almost, I mean, I'm just saying this because we're talking quickly, but it can almost be like a split personality. There's me, the rising, and then there's me, the sun, and we're not really, together or on the same page.
Yeah. And in the 7th house, so we talked about the midheaven, sun at the midheaven, you're born around noon, and potentially that makes total sense with this, like, you're here to show up in the world and flood your light, flooding on probably like your career or your calling, or your, like, something about your social standing, status. but it could be in a square, a tension with your rising sign. The same thing if you're born around midnight and at the IC or the nadir. Yeah.
Right.
That's like your sun is more hidden, so nobody really knows you unless you decide to share your personality. I feel
Or
like
you're trying to figure out the person that everyone says they know.
yes, yeah,
You know, which is what I've seen a lot show up with people with their sons in the 6, 7, or 8. You know, that there's a real kind of like, who's this person that everyone's dealing with? Or, you know, they say I'm really lighthearted, but I don't feel lighthearted. Or they say I'm really pretty, but I don't feel pretty. Or they say that I'm manipulative and I was just being upfront, you know. So whenever you've had that kind of feeling like there's a disconnect between who you know yourself to be and the person that everyone else is relating to, check to see if the sun is, like, for instance, in the 6th, 7th, or the 8th houses.
I love
that.
Yeah, I love that because I often think about the 7th house when people's sons are there. It's like they see themselves through other people, or they're constantly focused on other people, whether they're single or not, in relationship or not. There's this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they also struggle a lot because what we have to remember when you've got the sun in the 7th, especially the closer it gets to that cusp, they're born under a setting sun. And so a lot of times, I learned this from Lynn Bell years ago, and I just started like asking, and it was like, it doesn't hit every single time, but a lot of times it does. I'll be like, you know, well, was your father gone? Did your father depart? Did your father, you know, was he away? And I've gotten so many answers. Oh, are you talking about my biological father?
When people have their sun on their descendant?
Yeah. Oh, are you talking about my biological father? I didn't really know him. Or my dad was away a lot, or my dad was traveling, or my dad passed away. You know, a lot of times the sun in the 7th can be a setting sun. And as you know, the sun is one of the representations of the father.
The father, yeah.
Right. And so it can be like that. And so what I kind of found was that there was that sense of they themselves departing, or fear of departing, or the fear of setting. Okay. And then that set up a very particular relationship with the rising sign, you know.
That is so interesting. I have never thought about it being about the father.
Oh, yeah.
That makes total sense because the sun. Yeah.
And what I've also seen with people who have the sun in 6, 7, and 8 is that the rising sign can cover for them. You know, they might not feel up to the task. They might not feel, you know, they might be emotionally upset about something like this. And the rising sign will just put on a face and get right on through whatever the situation is. I mean, it's almost like, did you ever watch Sybil? Okay, I have too many TV references today.
Yeah, I know. I remember
Sally Field and Sybil. Did you ever see that? Brilliant. How much do we love that? Okay. And it was like, you know, Vanessa kept your music, and Peggy Sue, your outrage, and Marcia, your depression, or something. I don't know. Like she would switch to a different personality. That's almost what the rising sign does in a situation like this. Okay. If the sun is feeling troubled or whatever, the rising sign kind of like steps in, and it will cover. It will
cover whatever's going on underneath. Yeah.
And so that was something that I started watching about maybe 8 years ago. I was like, wow, you know, so the rising sign's doing a lot of work in the chart. And I don't think it's passive. I think it's very interactive, you know.
Yes.
And
I think it comes a lot from like your childhood as well. I think it was Linda Cabuto Bird she gave a talk about how your family influences. So depending on, especially like the element of your rising sign, can speak a lot about what it was like in your birth family, or when you were growing up. Or early childhood education that has, you know. And like water risings, you had to know the temperature around the room because it was all this unspoken stuff. So you had to, that's why rising signs are so like intuitive,
Right.
because you need to know whether it's mommy's angry or daddy's sick, or you know, the child in the family who like has a big outburst and it causes everything to change. You had to know those sorts of things
Yeah.
in order to find your way through that kind of family life.
Yeah. And I think we also have to remember that the rising sign is going to be connected to health, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because we often connect the sixth house to health, but the rising sign was about the vitality of the horoscope
Yes.
itself. And then it's also going to be about how you approach something too,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
like, do you withdraw from an objective first? You know, like
Ah.
sometimes Cancer risings can do, because, you know, it's the Cancer making a circle around, you know, the objective that it wants to reach, but it doesn't give itself away.
Oh,
Um,
but doesn't go straight right in.
it doesn't go straight right. Well, because Cancers, right? They're
The
like the
crab goes
crab,
side to side.
right?
Yeah.
They never go right after it. Mm-mm.
Where they're Aries rising, boom.
It's like, where is it? You know, who do you want knocked around them? You know,
Yeah.
whatever. You know, it's on the attack. You
Or,
know,
or
so
Capricorn rising. Mm,
which is like, excuse me, you're on
doubts.
my way to the next level.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or
I love
Libra
that.
rising, which is inviting.
Hmm.
Okay,
Very
because
inviting to.
Libra wants to invite,
Mhm.
wants to see what you're bringing to the table, how you're going to help a situation.
Yeah.
So the way that we approach a situation is very much going to be described by our rising sign. And then, of course, the planet that shows up on it. You know, if you've got Mars rising, you're very direct and very fast. If you've got Saturn, you're used to false start after false start,
Mm-hmm.
after delay, after detour, after false start. You know, if you're Pluto, you know, like, you have to be very aware of your Pluto rising, because you give off a vibe that people find a little bit foreboding, you know. And
Yeah.
so the rising signs also teach us to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they teach us to look at the face, and to be aware of the face and the presence in a room.
Yes, they do. Yeah. I love that. And yeah, when people have planets in their first house conjunct their rising sign, often, yeah. Can you just look at someone and tell their rising sign? Some people are so good at that.
I know. I envy them. I envy them so much. I wish I could do
Uh-huh.
that. No,
Uh,
I'm awful.
oh,
I mean, maybe I'll get a planet. I'll be like, you know, sun is strong or something.
uh,
But, you know, it's just, well, it's, you know, the more you know astrology, the more you second and triple and quadruple guess, you know, and things like that. But, you know, sometimes I could get that kind of a flavor. I mean, the face will show it. Although, you know, the face had a very complicated history with the rising sign as well.
oh, I
Um,
want you to explain that, because no, I did not know the complicated history.
well, basically, the whole notion of the rising sign, the understanding of the rising sign comes from physiognomy, okay,
Mm-hmm.
which means
Mm-hmm.
basically reading a face, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first treatise is attributed to Aristotle, although everyone's like, I don't think Aristotle wrote this. I think they just like took his name and put it on it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, type of thing. But it would talk about how you could read the life of the soul in someone's face. And so you can make a character judgment on them. And so now what they were looking for initially was comparison between a person's face and a beast. Okay, because the soul is of a bestial nature. And so, like, you know, if you kind of like had a heavy, you know, sort of bovine look that was, you know, mulish or bullish, you know, or if you had a regal, you know, lion look that was more regal. So these values or attributes were made. And so it just, over time, if you think about it, if you're exposed to astrology, which is basically animals and faces, you know, this whole notion of this idea of the face giving away the spirit underneath, or the soul, not spirit, the soul underneath, okay, and then
Mm-hmm.
describing its characteristics. And then by the time you get into ancient Judaism, you've got this idea of animal soul versus divine soul. Okay, and so the adjustments made in astrology was like the divine soul was going to be associated to the sun, which was finding itself in the world, and we still carry this idea, you know, but that the animal soul could come out in the face. Okay, and so you would start to get attributes like long faces, aquiline noses, pushed noses, full lips. Perhaps you can see where this is starting to go, and where it began. And part of physiognomy was also a comparison to other races. And so, you know, low foreheads, prominent foreheads, you know, a jowly head, you know, a more sleek or refined. And over a period of time, astrology began to transmit basically racial stereotypes based on these characteristics. And they were also attributed to the face. You'll still see them pop up from time to time with face reading, okay, but where it really sort of takes off, I mean, it does this whole physiognomic history with Levatar, all these French physiognomists. It's basically precedes astrology, you know, and what we're getting at basically is typing a personality according to their face, and that's what the rising sign begins to take on, like, or takes on more fully in 15th, 16th century. So that by the time you get to the American astrologers and the German astrologers in the 20th century, you've got full-out eugenics going on.
Wow. Wow, I had no idea of any of this. Oh, wow.
Full-out eugenics going on in astrology, especially when you get into the 19-teens. Evangeline Adams plays around with it in her horoscope columns in the 1920s. And there was a flirtation with astrology. You had fingerprinting that was being introduced into criminology. The measuring of the skull, you know, what was a defective character, a criminal character versus a superior and more civilized one. And so this is again where the rising sign was being connected to the chart as well in order to determine what was going to be, you know, a respectable, refined character or one that you couldn't trust because they had shifty eyes like a fox, you know. And so astrology, if you sort of dig around, actually carries a lot of this. I mean, you don't have to spend much time digging around in the history of Saturn to see all the anti-Semitism that is carried around in Saturn, that is still repeated by astrologers to this day, you know. And so
it's miserly and oh,
absolutely, absolutely. So and issues around women, Venusian, you know, this is all of this misogyny. So just as much as astrology shows up in a culture and performs and interacts in a culture, that culture is also influencing and coloring astrology. And one of the things that it really did influence a lot was the rising sign.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I had no idea, but now that you say that about Saturn, I can totally see how that that some of those negative connotations. And I study horary and I practice horary, I should say.
Okay.
And so one of the, like, especially like with Lily, with all of his work where he would talk to the person when they came down to a consultation. For anyone who doesn't know, horary is when you ask, someone asks a question to an astrologer and the astrologer casts a chart to answer the question.
Right.
And one of the things he would do would be to describe the person asked about based on the 7th house or whichever house it was related to and the planets in there and the sign there based on, you know, the astrology. So I love how you're adding all of that extra layer of how you got to be careful with doing that. Yeah.
The shifty glance, the sly fox, I mean, that's going to be
Oh,
connected
yeah.
to Mercury and to Gemini, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, those
Yeah.
so it's a, I mean, I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's something that actually showed up a lot
It's
in the
fascinating.
rising sign
Yes.
literature. Yeah.
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 No, that is really interesting to know, and I have to dig into a little bit more of that at some point. It's incredibly interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's super duper fascinating, you know, and sometimes you're just kind of like, what? You know, because particularly when astrology is in Persia, astrology gets reintroduced into Europe, and it's commenting on Persia, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden you have all of these like fair-haired, red-haired,
Yeah.
blonde-haired descriptions coming in,
Mhm.
and the Persians are like, who the hell are you talking
Exactly. Yes.
about?
Yeah. That's when it gets really dicey when you're talking about people of other
Oh, yeah, well,
ethnicities with
especially
this.
since it had been in Persia for so many centuries,
Yeah.
and Europe was the Johnny-come-latelys. You
Yeah.
know, the French court was the Johnny-come-lately, and they're like, excuse me, what are you talking about here?
Exactly. Yeah. Adapting. Yeah. And I also loved how in the book how you talk about face to face when you're looking at other people when you're in the synastry between the charts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Basically, what's going to bring someone into your orbit and things like this.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that in synastry, to really that the big thing to understanding synastry is really understanding the language that the two people are speaking to one
Mm-hmm.
another. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that it's very important to understand that. But again, I think that you know, what we're seeing is not necessarily what you're getting, and I don't mean that in a deceptive way. That there's
Mm-hmm.
always, you know, the way that someone's going to present themselves or the way we're going to read someone,
Yeah.
okay, that's not necessarily going to be who they are underneath, you know, and it just means, you know, getting to that getting to know that person more and more. And I think that, you know, a lot of times we'll talk about sun sign synastry, like this sign gets along with that sign but doesn't get along with that sign. But when you bring in the rising sign, it can actually become a very powerful mediating figure in terms of a relationship. And it can redirect the energy in such a way as to make it more harmonious or understandable for the two people who are involved in the relationship. But I also think that we learn fascinating things, you know, from the idea of the rising sign as the face. You know, for instance, like the
Mm-hmm.
phrase saving face, you know,
Ah,
that,
yes.
right? And what does saving face mean? You know, it's allowing someone who might lose a dispute or lose a sale or whatever to save face, to be able to exit in a way
That's they maintain their dignity.
that they
Yeah.
maintain their dignity. You can hear the rising sign. You can even hear the midheaven with that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that idea of like of maintaining the dignity and the importance of that. And so I think that we learn a lot of relating and politic and politeness from an understanding and a deeper appreciation of the rising sign at work. Like, you know, if you're in a relationship, let's say you're in a couple with someone and you're at a party and you're both laughing and things like that, um, you know, and then one of you starts to tell a story, you don't want the other couple to be like, oh God, not that story again,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, you
Yeah,
sort of like,
exactly.
you don't want to humiliate or
Uh-huh.
whatever, you know, the person. And so there are these kind of like added nuances
Mm-hmm.
that I think an understanding of the rising sign and the face brings to an understanding of relationships very powerfully.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And what about, so I know your website's called rulingplanets.com. And
Yeah.
so the ruling planet, do you ascribe it to your chart ruler, whichever planet rules your rising sign,
Oh,
or
yeah.
sometimes?
For me, and uh, not a lot of astrologers believe this, but it works for me. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Um, the proof is in the technique's proof is in the pudding. But for me, the ruling planet is the planet that rules your sun sign.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so that's how I use the ruling planet. And so the ruling planet for me is your patron saint, your corporate sponsor, your life coach, and
Yes.
your den mother all wrapped up in one.
Yeah.
And that will be the fourth component of a chart that I will read right off the bat. I'll look at the sun, moon, rising, and then I will look at the ruling planet, but the ruling planet is the planet that rules over Team Libra, so to
Uh-huh.
speak, or
Okay.
Team Taurus. You know, so that, for instance, if you're born under Taurus, for you, Venus is going to be the planet to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And where she is in the sky will actually have a lot of influence on how you're doing. And
I
so,
am loving Venus exalted in
how
Pisces.
much, right? Like, she is so fantastic. It's Venus exalted in Pisces, gets to stay at the 5-star hotel with spa package
I
included.
know.
You know,
And I love this Venus Neptune conjunction we had this week. I just had some of the most delightful thoughts, like created these fantasies in my head about things happening.
and isn't
I
that
just love,
wonderful?
yes,
She's in your corner there, you know.
she is.
She
She's in my
is.
ninth house too, so
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
it's a beautiful I mean, that's what makes me secretly sometimes want to be Taurus rising, because it's kind of like I could
You
get
wish
into that whole Venusian,
I
you
feel more of that 29 Aries with you.
know. I know everyone says that.
Yeah, I feel more of that. And my sun moon midpoint is on 29 Aries.
Okay.
So that explains like the instant love.
And besties for life.
Exactly. Now let me read, there's some questions and comments.
Sure.
So let's go through that. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Stardust Guru loves Cosmic Calendar. That's another one of Christopher's book. And I meant to bring it and put it on the table, and I forgot. So, but
okay.
you can show everybody the cosmic
Honey,
calendar.
it's okay. You're talking to a Capricorn here.
You're prepared. There's the cosmic calendar. It's an amazing book. Yeah, it's just so many comments about how much people love you and your storytelling.
They go
And
together
someone
on the
said
bookshelf.
Pinocchio will never be the
Oh,
same. Yeah.
saw the Jupiter Pinocchio. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I loved, like, I didn't time it exactly. We're just trying to coordinate our calendars, but I love that Mercury is sextiling Jupiter while we're talking. Mercury in Aquarius, sextiling Jupiter in Aries. Yeah. And Yogi Around the World mentioned that.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because you're such a Jupiterian figure with all this wisdom that you impart. And I'm asking you questions. I love it.
Well, and thank God I've got Mercury in Sagittarius.
I love that you have Mercury. That helps you with that storyteller.
Oh my God. I thank God for that, you know, because no one wants to be an unholy bull.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's your fun factor too. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so Tarot Talk, Christopher's moon is in Pisces. Okay, what degree is your Pisces moon? Do you know?
Oh my God, loser astrologer. They try to remember. I believe it's 15.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering because my North Node is at 9.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you were near there. But I love that.
We could still.
Yeah.
We could still.
Yes. Yeah, someone said, a Cloudy Kate said she hears Jupiter through and through when you're talking. Yes, and that's your Mercury and Sag.
Absolutely. Jupiter. I mean, I can hear it too. I was always like the loudest voice, the loudest laugh at the party.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Aries rising.
The one that, you know, the moment that everything went quiet, like, and, you know, and even when called out, rolling eyes, and like, okay, whatever. So all that Jupiter and fire and Aries comes on out there.
Yes. Oh, Cloudy Kate also says you have words like lyrics, a mythical liquid. I love that. And we have some whiskey voice comments. Yes, people are loving your raspy voice.
B. Arthur, my best B. Arthur.
Yes.
I'm one day out of the iron lung, I swear to God. I was like, you know, for a long time. Right.
Yeah, we have like a Golden Ram talked about their Libra rising with an Aries sun. So when that Aries sun comes out, people probably get a little surprised with someone with a Libra rising, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. They get, including the person who's got the Aries sun with the Libra rising, they get surprised, because the Libra is telling everyone, come in, have a seat, you're welcome here, everything's amiable, we're going to be like this. And then the Aries sun, especially if it's being made to feel, especially if it's being made to wait, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because a Libra rising will listen and let the other person talk and take in and really sort of want to hear more of the story. And Libra rising is wonderful for interviewing, but then the Aries sun, if it's starting to feel like, well, I've got, listen to me, all of a sudden like come out and it's like, and it could just sort of like erupt. Because it just, the Aries is so much about the urgency, and especially in the setting position where it feels like it's going down, you don't know how or when that urgency is going to get triggered.
Yeah.
And so, but then you can get the flip side. You can get a very, not militant, but militaristic Libra flavor. And,
like Hitler? Although he was a Taurus.
That's Taurus, but I was actually kind of thinking Eisenhower.
Oh, Eisenhower, okay.
A lot of military generals are Libra, and so you can actually get an enforcing figure with an Aries Libra rising. But that figure might be like, okay, you've been fired. I feel bad that you've been fired. You have to collect all of your things in this box right now. Okay, so the Aries with Libra rising might be the person who shows up at your desk to walk you out of your office and down to the door and to make sure that you leave the premises, all the while perhaps mentioning, I don't write the rules, but I follow this, and this is the way that it needs to be done. So with an Aries Libra rising, you can also get someone who very much follows the rules and follows protocol, and that's the way it's going to be done because that's what's been set up. And so you can get that sort of Libra law and order meeting almost a military Aries in that kind of combination as well.
Yeah. Now, what are some words about Virgo risings? A lot of people who come to me have Virgo risings, and yeah. What are some of the things you tell people about that?
What I often say to people who have Virgo rising is make friends with your ego.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's interchangeable with ego is not, is not a swear word. All right. Because the thing is with the Virgo rising, there's such a tendency to lead with serving. And to lead with being of service, which automatically brings in humility. Okay. And they can sometimes they can be comfortable with that. That's just what I do, and sometimes it can be like, I'm the head of this company. Why am I being treated like the person who goes and gets the coffee at Starbucks? Okay. Like, can I get some respect here, or can I get some, are you following my leadership? Are you following what I have to say? And the Virgo rising can put off a more worker type of flavor, service type of flavor or type of energy, where the person feels more like, oh, you're a fellow worker like me and you're going through rough times like me. And so when you start to get imperious, like it doesn't sit right and people are kind of like, huh? Or, starting to give direction or leadership, it can strike people as being odd in some sort of way. So you have to make friends with your ego if you're Virgo rising. You have to be able to say, okay, I can serve you and help you to help yourself and all these sorts of things. But there might come a time where I have to put myself first. Okay? And so I'm now putting myself first. And that's especially like if you're a Leo sun or a Sagittarius sun or really an Aries sun. Okay. And so you have to be able to do that because you can't live by being of service and help other people to help themselves all along, particularly if you're a fire sign. That Virgo rising is going to be like very quickly in life going to become a jacket that doesn't fit you very well. And so that can become a struggle between those two placements.
Yeah, although as a child you may have been mommy's little helper and gotten so much kudos for all of that.
Right.
But need to learn how to adjust yourself in the outer world where you're not as
where maybe you want,
especially if you're going to be a leader or in charge. Yeah.
or if you want to take command of something,
Yes.
let's say everyone assume, or let's say you feel like you're being exploited. That can happen a lot with people who are Virgo rising, where they can feel like they're being exploited or used in some way. But then the rising sign keeps saying, but you need to help them out. So, oh, hi, like and so they need to be able to sort of like control or redirect that.
Yes, and figure out how to make some changes. But also sometimes that comes from the perfectionism like aspect of wanting all this like approval, and need to adjust over time to grow into that. And I think with this Mars retrograde, hopefully that's helped a lot of people who have Virgo risings.
You really
like,
had to learn
figure
it.
out like the tension that brought. Figure out, okay, we're done with this kind of behavior. I'm going to start changing and doing.
Well, the thing is, I always want to honor the rising sign, and it's like I want to honor rising sign and the sun, for instance. There's got to be a way to make them work. That rising sign's not going to change. Okay, a Pisces rising is never going to learn boundaries. Don't even try. Okay, like they'll recite it back to you, like, okay, I'm working on my boundaries, to get you off their back. But a Pisces rising just is never going to learn boundaries. You cannot teach boundaries to a sea turtle, which is like swimming the currents of the ocean. It's like, boundaries is a land thing, okay? So Pisces rising just isn't going to get the boundary thing, okay?
But they try. Okay, I have some Pisces risings in my orbit have made strides on that boundary setting.
And they've kept that progress like a wave on the shore, right? Like the wave comes out and then it recedes back into another wave.
Okay, true. Yeah.
And that should be all right.
It is. Yeah. You just have to honor that you're sensitive and empathetic and have to.
Just like, you have to get used to a Gemini rising, being there and having a conversation with you, and also sort of like looking around to see if they can talk to someone else or whatever, and then coming back to the conversation with you, and just, you can't torture them. Don't be a Scorpio who tortures a Gemini rising by like, eyes here. Don't do that to a Gemini rising. Don't do that to them. It's not nice.
Yeah, and I have people like walking around on my balcony outside because they're doing work, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" They're
right, they have to be taking in all of that. That's that's really important with the Gemini rising.
That's like a Gemini rising on every day. Yeah.
So don't like torture them.
Yeah.
Don't torture them with like eyes right here. Just like don't ask a Scorpio rising to sort of like unload and reveal everything that's going on emotionally. It's like, don't do that. You're not going to get that far with it,
Yeah.
So honor the face you're talking to, and if it's in your own chart, honor, the face that your chart is showing, because it will find a way to work with the rest of the chart. Believe it or not, that Cancer rising will find a way to work with the Aquarian sun. Okay.
Yeah.
They will find a way to make the whole thing work. It may take a little while to get through them.
Maybe when the progressed moon is in the side of the Cancer, and that's when they start emotionally connecting in with that energy or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Or see that actually having home or a sense of home is a good thing, but Aquarius isn't the only sign, for instance, that can have issues with the home. Pisces can, Sagittarius can. I mean, so it's just, and I like what you're saying about with progressed planets, progressed moon, that might actually bring an easier understanding there.
Yeah. Someone's asking, what is the name of the book? It's Rise and Shine by Christopher, an astrological guide to how you show up in the world.
My editor came up with that. I was like, oh my God, you're so brilliant, Mary.
I love it.
Right.
I love it. And so the link to it will be in when I post the recording. I'll make sure there's a link there so people who want to get the book can get it, or, it's at wherever books are sold. Your publisher is Penguin. And
Penguin Random
how do you
House.
say
Yeah.
share parody? How do you say that?
I know. I had to get Tartar Perky.
What does that mean?
It's a. I know. I should be sorry about it. I should be like. It's actually a fusion of two publishing houses.
Oh, okay.
There was Tarchers and there was Perky, and they came together. And I think they're out of the West Coast. Might have been the
Oh,
background.
okay. Okay.
I think.
Okay.
But for someone who just I just saw something really quickly. They asked about their Scorpio. I think it was a grandson.
Uh-huh.
Scorpio rising, and you know, it's important. And she said, I think very quickly, that person said very quickly that there was anger, you know, that came out, and it's really important with the Scorpio rising to give the emotional space.
Mm-hmm.
That person, you know, because everyone makes a joke about it. I mean, Scorpio rising is the bitch face rising sign of the zodiac,
Mm-hmm.
and all those sorts of things. But anger can be an issue because for Scorpio, anger can be connected to willpower.
Mm.
Okay, and it's not just getting angry at one, but Scorpios and with Scorpio rising can attract hostility. Okay, or bully has become a big word, but they can attract bullying or being, you know, some sort of antagonism because people sense the Mars in the rising. Okay, they sense that energy, and so they can go through things where their feelings have been hurt, you know, and they can get angry. And the thing when you're dealing with a Mars energy like that, especially in a rising position, you want to sort of be supportive, but not too much, because they need to go through that anger process, you know, and they'll be the ones to say that they're on the other side of that. And
They need to metabolize the anger on their own time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, really important to let them do that. Okay. You're not going to have that same thing with Pisces or Cancer. You're going to have it with Scorpio. Because Scorpio, of all the water signs, is the Mars water sign.
Yeah.
So it resists the compassion and the sympathy that naturally come with Cancer and Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
Because being Marsy, it feels like that's weak.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will hold on to it, but still it's a water sign, so it will let go of it. And so if you allow them that space and that room to work through the upset, they'll arrive on the other side of it in a good place, you know. And so I just saw that, and I was just like, that's a particular,
fantastic.
that's a rising sign signature, right?
I like how you say that about bullying, because I've seen that with people with Pluto in their first house.
Yeah.
That sometimes people either attribute to them to being really intense or unapproachable, or people like try to like destroy them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's if you've got Pluto rising or Scorpio rising, you're the owner with the pit bull at the dog park.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everyone immediately like picks up the Pomeranians, you know, and they move their dogs away. You're trouble. You brought that, you know, and so that's why it's really important when, for instance, you've got a Scorpio rising or Pluto on the ascendant. It's important to own that energy before that energy owns you.
I love that.
To move that over to you. Mm-hmm. Okay, because you can be giving off, and this is what again deconstructed that whole idea of just like why it's not a mask or why it's not a persona. Mm-hmm. You know, people will be like, why does everyone feel like I'm just this foreboding, you know, and it's going to be a Scorpio rising mm-hmm. or Pluto rising, mm-hmm. and it just comes out, you know, and we don't always see it in the rising placement. And so it's really important if that's going on to listen to it, mm-hmm. okay, and then to try to work with it. Of course, seeing it in your chart is going to help you to work with that as well. It's just like people with Uranus rising or Aquarius rising. Everyone assumes they have no feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you
right.
have? We've gone over a little bit. Do you have 10 more minutes? Or
sure.
More
sure.
More comments. Yeah, this is such a great conversation. So someone, K Ward, is asking about her husband is a Scorpio rising, which we're talking about, but an Aquarius sun.
Right.
So they're in square. That's a tough
It's
one.
a tough
Yeah.
one because of the disconnect.
Yeah.
Your husband doesn't see himself the way that people do.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
rational. He's being very formulaic. If he wants to be by himself, he wants to be by himself to be Saturnine, you know, to reflective or follow his own pursuits or whatever. But he doesn't see that brooding quality that comes out. He thinks he's just being, you know, reasonable and by himself and keeping his own company and things like that. He doesn't see that there's a brooding quality. Saturn types like Aquarius and Capricorn can be a little sardonic. They can be sharp. Add a Scorpio rising to it, and people are like, "What did you say?"
Mm.
You know, like, are you looking for a Mars energy fight? What did you say? You know, and so the more that the Aquarius is just sort of like, I simply said this, you know,
Uh-huh.
they repeat, you know, it's already escalating. Oh, so you're
Yep.
giving me attitude right now. So you're giving me this right now.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Were you ever an actor, Christopher?
yeah.
Oh my God, when you went into that persona, I was like, I felt it so deeply. I was like, oh. What did I say?
Oh, because I know, sorry.
I took on that whole, that was amazing. No, perfect.
Yeah, but it can come across like that. So what's really important is to get your husband to hear how people could be hearing that. You know, he might be annoyed that he has to slow down for them, or that he's only being brusque because he's getting right to the point. So he might have to work on his, because that Aquarius can be like that. So he might have to work on his presentation a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
Or
that's
be aware of it. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you can also have interesting versions in which the Venus is working independently of the rest of the chart. You know? I told these people I keep telling these people I'm not interested. I don't want to hang out with them or whatever. But the Venus and the rising is saying, oh, that, you know, he doesn't really mean that. He really wants to hang out with you. Like, come on back. He wants to hang out with you. So, you know, it could be like, why are all these people following me around? Because the Venus rising is being agreeable. And everyone thinks like you're like a wonderful person to be around and things like that. But, you know, if you've got a Saturn sun or a Pluto sun and you want to be left alone, you know, it could become a little bit of a curse, you know, having a Libra rising. And it even shows up with Taurus rising. You know.
Let's see. There's a question in here, and then I'm sure you have many things to do. Do you have anything to say about Sag risings? And then we'll.
They come on. Sagittarius rising. To me, Sagittarius rising is like the Tigger rising. Okay, it's the bouncing, rising? The Tigger rising, the bouncing tiger.
Yes.
You know?
Like the
Tigger from Winnie the Pooh.
Too? Okay, yeah.
It's like Tigger rising. It's boundless enthusiasm, wanting to be, you know, wanting to like, you know, follow what you have to say if you're of great interest. It's a very, very animated features and face and all of this. And once it starts getting boring, they're kind of like, you know, you could see, I mean, this is the thing about Sagittarius rising. Don't play poker unless you're really good, okay? Because you so do not have a poker face. Everyone can see in an instant when you lost interest, when you got bored, when you know, but they'll still be kind of like, oh yeah, no, well, what makes you think? Like, you know, and you become more and more forced. So Sagittarius rising is almost like one of the most honest rising signs that can be, okay? Because if they're into something, it's an exciting idea. If they believe in it, they're behind you 150,000%, okay? But once you start losing their interest or it's getting complicated or bogged down with things or technical or whatever, they're rolling their eyes. They don't really want to follow this. It's just like, oh my God, this is, it's it's kind of like a wonderful dog. Okay, it greets you at the end of the day, and then afterwards it's like, okay, find your place or whatever. We're on to the next thing, but. But Sagittarius rising is a wonderful, wonderful placement. It's a lot of fun. And God bless people with Gemini suns and Sagittarius rising.
Oh my God, yes, that is a
Because
combination.
those poor Gemini suns are, it's like they're on a runaway horse. It's almost like they got on the horse and someone spiked the backs of it and the horse went running off and they're like, so those poor Sagittarius sun with those poor Gemini suns with Sagittarius rising, because they're always trying to keep up with this really boundlessly enthusiastic rising side.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that description. Yes, yeah. Well, this has been such a pleasure. We have to do this again because I could.
I would love it. I'd love
another hour.
Any excuse, any reason to visit with you is always like wonderful. I adore it.
Yes. So just to let people know again, your book is Rise and Shine, and it can help you understand your rising sign as well as the cosmic calendar. And yes, and tell people, is there anything? There's the cosmic calendar. Is there anything that you want to promote so people know and tell them how to find you and all that good stuff?
Sure. You can find me on Celeste's followers list. Okay. But I have a website called rulingplanets.com where you can book a reading, or you can subscribe for $1.99 a month, $22 a year, and it talks all about your ruling planet. And it's also where I house my weekly horoscopes, daily horoscopes, things like that. You can follow me on Instagram at @Renstrom, where I post daily horoscopes every day but Sunday. And I'll also have weekly horoscopes. And then Astrology Hub, I also do a weekly horoscope highlights for them, which is kind of like an unpacking of the week and things like that. And there's readings. I teach a class Tuesday night, but that's based on Mountain Time. So sometimes that works with people's schedules, sometimes it doesn't.
What kind of class do you teach on Tuesdays?
In all fairness, it's really like a book club. But the books are horoscopes. Okay, so it's really, you come in at whatever level that you are, and it's an ongoing class. And sometimes it's small and sometimes it's larger. And we have people from India and Australia as well as the United States and things like that. But our time is Mountain Time. And we'll, more often than not, we'll take a horoscope and sort of like break it down and things like that. Or sometimes we'll focus on a technique. Like I think there was a time when we did T-squares, where we did everyone's T-squares and things like that. Another class was Chiron. We did everyone's Chirons and things like that. So it's really, and it's open to all levels. And it's just really, it's a delight. I love my class when they show up. Sometimes it's kind of like, oh, it's late, or I had a long day, Christopher, or whatever. But that can be a fun sort of thing too. And I've got a Facebook page, and I don't know, is there any other social media that's out there? I'm not on TikTok.
That's plenty. Yeah.
Right. I think that's enough.
Yeah. And so for everybody to know, both Christopher and I have problems with fake accounts, with people, scammers, pretending to be us and offering people readings. We will never DM you offering you a reading. You can follow either us from the carrot here before we go. But yeah.
And unfortunately, I can't follow people because it's going to get misunderstood as a fake account and things like that. Oh, but you did remind me, every Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, I do an IG Live with my friend Emily. And those will have different topics. We come on for about an hour, and we'll do anything from Pisces season, which is next. We'll talk about the sun, all the planets in the sign of where Emily and I have given each other an astrological chart that we don't know the identity. And
Uh-huh.
so we have to read who it is, or we'll do ask us something about your chart, or we'll do a special feature like Saturn going into Pisces. Or we're doing one that's called Sad Astro that's up and coming. And it's a riff on all those depressing descriptions that you read in all the astrology books.
Yeah,
And so
I've caught
we're
you two
literally,
before. You have great chemistry.
and
Yeah,
we'll
I love
literally
it.
take out the book and read it out loud to each other. So it's a lot of fun, and so that's a fun thing too. That if you want to come join us, you're always welcome, and it's a delight. So Celeste, you've watched some of those.
Yes, yes, I love it. Yeah, you
Oh,
two are great together.
isn't she
Yes.
fun? I love Emily, my
Yes.
sweet little Emily. She's so fun.
Yeah.
She's made a decent man out of me.
Oh, good. And for anyone who's new to me, I'm doing a bunch of workshops about the moon.
Oh, when
The
and
Cancer
where?
Rising. Cancer Rising. Yeah. So they're February 26th, March 2nd, and there's an Ask Me Anything on March 8th. You can get to them from the link in my bio. And yeah, those are going to be free. And yeah, so I love getting on Zoom and chatting with people and pulling. And at the end, I always pull up people's charts who
Isn't it
want
fun?
it.
Oh, you can pull up chart on
On
Zoom, but not on.
Zoom. Yeah, not
Right,
here. I do those on
right,
Zoom. Yeah. Yeah,
right.
because here you can't do
Oh,
it. Yeah.
I want to see your moon one.
Well, yeah, you can come or you can watch it afterwards. It'll be on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you've got all that coordinated. You're such a better person than I am.
Well, I spent 28 years in corporate, so I've got those
Okay,
kind
so
of.
you know how to coordinate and to cross whatever. Honey, I'm a loser. I'm just like,
You are
show me where
perfect.
you want me.
You are perfect the way you are. Yes, you are. Yes. Well, I have so loved this more than I could ever tell you,
I
Christopher.
have loved it too,
Thank
and
you
you're
for
so sweet,
your
so kind.
wisdom. Yes.
Oh,
Okay. Take care. Have a good weekend and
you do
feel
too,
better.
sweetie. Take care. I love you. Bye bye.
Bye.